everyone, welcome back. For those of you who are new here, my name is Brittany. I'm a health coach and nutritionist, and my channel is all about helping people with IBS reduce their symptoms and improve their lives. So if you're into it, go ahead and subscribe for more low FODMAP recipe tutorials, as well as my tips and tricks for living a low FODMAP lifestyle. Okay, so today I'm gonna teach you guys how to make pumpkin pie. This pie is gluten-free, dairy-free, and low FODMAP, and it is going to be the perfect accompaniment to your Thanksgiving dinner this year. So let's get started. I'm not at the place yet where I know how to make a gluten-free pie crust, but if you are and you have a gluten-free pie recipe that you would like me to try, please send it to me. I would love that. But for now, we are going to stick this back in the freezer and whip up our filling. So let's do that. Okay, so today we're gonna be using a can of canned pumpkin. You wanna make sure that you are not buying pumpkin pie filling because that's gonna have like sugar and spices and all that stuff in it already. We're gonna add that stuff ourselves. So make sure you're buying pumpkin puree that's only pumpkin, okay? Okay, so the first thing that we're gonna do with our canned pumpkin is dry it out, which sounds a little bit weird, but let me show you, I'll explain. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take this pumpkin puree and I'm gonna spread it all in this bowl onto the sides. It smells so good already. Okay, so we're gonna take this all the way up the sides of the bowl, and you wanna try to get this in a thin enough layer as possible. As thin a layer as possible. Okay. So you see how it's spread out around the whole bowl. And next, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take some paper towels, and we are going to layer the paper towels on top of this. See how when we place that on there, it's already starting to draw out some of that moisture? That's exactly what we want. We're gonna use probably like 3 layers. Make sure you get all the pumpkin that's on the sides. So that is pressed in there nicely, and now we're just going to let that sit for 20 minutes. So let me set a timer and I will explain to you why we do that. Okay, so we're drying out the moisture of our pumpkin for 3 reasons. So first, you want to have less moisture in your pumpkin puree that we're adding to our filling, just so that our pie isn't too watery, it doesn't get waterlogged. Secondly, drawing out the moisture like this is also gonna draw out the bitterness. So think about the way that we salt our eggplant and sweat it and draw out the moisture and also the bitterness from the eggplant. We're doing basically the same thing here with the pumpkin. I have tried this recipe without doing this step, and I just think it comes out better this way. So I know it's a bit weird, but trust me. The third reason why we're doing this is because I feel like it makes it a little lower FODMAP. Now, let me explain this. So it's similar to the reason why canned beans are lower FODMAP than regular beans. So this is because when the beans are sitting in the water, in the can, in the water, the FODMAPs are water soluble. So it's pulling all the FODMAPs out of the beans into the water. And then when we rinse it and discard the bean water, it's lower FODMAP, right? So we are pulling out the moisture and pulling out the water. So I feel that as a consequence of that, we're also pulling out some of the FODMAPs. Now, I don't have any evidence to back this up, but I feel like theoretically it works this way. So I think it's a cool thing that I just want to let you guys know about. Those are the reasons why I do it this way. And you can see like it's already pulling more moisture out. And when we're done with this, when we come back, all of this paper towel is gonna be completely soaked. So we've got about 15 more minutes. Let's let that, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. Let's let it sit and I'll be back. All right, guys, you can see the edges aren't like fully soaked, but that's fine. All the moisture has been fully drawn out and into this like 12 layers of paper towels. So that's good enough for me. So let's just take this off. Ugh, toss it. Okay, so now we're just gonna add in the rest of our ingredients. And first we're gonna add in 3 eggs. So while we're mixing this up, we're gonna preheat our oven and we are gonna take our pie crust out to defrost. So let me do that really quick. We're gonna preheat the oven to 425 degrees. And we are just going to use these gluten-free pie shells according to the package directions, which says to let this thaw at room temperature for 10 to 20 minutes before we add our filling and bake it. So let me just separate these and leave one out for us because that's gonna be the perfect amount of time for us while we're waiting for our oven to preheat and mixing up the rest of our pie filling. Okay, so next we're going to be adding 1 cup of brown sugar. I have dark brown cane sugar that I'm gonna be using here today, but you can use regular brown sugar, light brown sugar. You can even use white sugar, it's fine, this doesn't really matter. I have made this with white sugar before and it was totally fine, but it is a little bit different because brown sugar is a little bit more moist than white sugar. So just be aware of that. Next, we're going to add a ½ teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of cinnamon, teaspoon of ginger, ½ teaspoon of nutmeg, and 1/8 of a teaspoon of cloves. As always, I will have this recipe linked in the description of this video, and it will take you to the website where I've got the full recipe and directions written out for you guys. Okay, next we're going to add 2 tablespoons of gluten-free flour. You guys know I like to use Bob's Red Mill 1-to-1 gluten-free baking flour. So this is really similar to our chocolate mug cake recipe actually, because it is an egg-based dessert with a little bit of flour in there just to give it a little bit of body. All right, the last ingredient we are going to use for this filling is coconut cream. And this part of the recipe is a little bit weird as well, so let me walk you through it. Okay, so you guys have probably noticed that when I use coconut cream in my recipes, I prefer to use the solid part of the coconut cream that rises to the top of the can. And that is because I feel like it is, that's the solid, fat part of the coconut cream, right? So since it's all fat and no liquid, there's no FODMAPs in it, right? Because FODMAPs are sugars that are in the liquid and not the fat. So that's why I make that distinction, because I feel like predominantly using the fat of the coconut cream is going to make this recipe low FODMAP. So let me get this solid part out of the can to show you guys. So you see, once you break through the fat in the can, there's all the liquid down at the bottom. And that's the part that I feel kind of messes up my stomach a little bit. Again, I don't have anything to back this up except for my personal experience and what I have noticed happens with my body over the past 5 years. So I'm gonna flatten this down, and this is basically 1 cup already, so I don't think I need to add any of that liquid. If this wasn't 1 cup, say it was 3/4 of a cup, I would splash in a little bit of this liquid and then mix it up and to get the right amount, and then put it in the filling. That way it has more of the fat and not as many of the FODMAPs. And because some people will just mix up the can all together and then pour. I don't recommend doing that. Okay, now let's just mix that all together. You want to break out a whisk for this, just to make sure everything is really nice and combined, because you don't want to get a bite of flour or just straight up brown sugar in your pie when you're eating it. You want it to be a smooth consistency. This looks so good. The other thing that you might notice from this recipe is that it's very rich and full of flavor, because we took the time to take all of that excess water out of our recipe that would dilute the flavor. Perfect timing. Okay, I think that's good enough. Now let's prep our pie crust. So you wanna make sure to pull out a baking sheet, because once you pour your pie in here, you're not gonna put it in the oven just like this. Just trust me, I've done that. I've made that mistake so many times. Make sure you put it on here. So the next thing that we're gonna do before we pour in our filling is we're gonna cover this crust part with foil. And that's to keep this part from burning while it's baking in the oven. Because we are going to start this pie cooking at a higher temperature and then lower the temperature. And at that point, we'll take off the foil to make sure the crust gets nice and brown. But we want to prevent it from burning when we are doing the initial like high temperature cooking to help the custard of this pie set. So you're just gonna wanna go slow and be gentle so you don't like mess up your crust. I have the tendency to be a little rough with this and impatient, and I kind of mess up my crust, but I'm gonna be really careful today. I always forget to do this first. And I think every other year I've done this, I pour in my filling and I'm like, oh crap, I need to cover the crust with foil. So make sure you do it this way. It's so much easier if you cover the crust first. Okay, there we go. And now we're just gonna add our filling. No filling left behind. Okay, so now we're just going to spread this out. Okay, and the last step is and that is what that's gonna do is going to shift the air bubbles that might be caught in the bottom to help them get to the top. All right, now let's pop this into the oven. We are going to cook it at 425 for 15 minutes. And then we are going to turn the heat down to 350 and take off the foil and let it finish cooking for about 30 to 35 minutes. So let's get that going. Very careful. So our pie has been cooking at 350 degrees for 30 minutes, and now I'm just going to take it out and check it to see if it's done. I'm gonna do that by inserting this knife into the middle and then see if it comes out clean. If there's anything sticking to the knife, then you wanna put it back in the oven and let it cook for 5 more minutes. All right guys, here's our pumpkin pie. I inserted the knife into the middle and just like a teensy bit was stuck on it. But it was mostly clean, so I'm just gonna let it go because like most other things, when you pull it out of the oven, it's still gonna continue to cook. So, and I would rather have my pie be like slightly under than like overcooked. So we are gonna let this cool for a couple of hours, probably before we cut into it, but typically I would let this cool overnight. I think that's a very common thing. People make pies the night before Thanksgiving and let them cool overnight. So that's what I would typically do. I'm going to let it sit a little bit on this baking dish before I transfer it over to this wire rack to cool. Just because it's still like very like molten in the middle and I want it to like keep its shape. So I'm just gonna leave it on here for about 20 minutes and then I'll move it to the cooling rack. But while that's cooling, let me show you guys how to make whipped cream because it's super easy and I don't eat the pre-made canned stuff. Like that stuff is gross, don't eat it. Especially after you figure out how easy it is to make whipped cream, you'll never eat that stuff again. So let's do that. Literally all we need, heavy cream and sugar, that's it. Okay, so we are gonna use 1 cup of heavy cream. Actually, that seems like a lot. Let's just make half a batch. So half a cup of heavy cream. Get all of this. And then we just need 1 tablespoon of sugar. You will need an electric mixer for this though. I mean, I guess you technically could hand whisk it, but that would take a really long time. So when I start to mix this, I'm gonna start on low, just to make sure that everything doesn't go everywhere, but then I'm gonna slowly ratchet the power up. You'll see. So you can see our cream starting to get thick. So I'm just gonna take this opportunity to wipe down the sides to make sure that we've got all that sugar together. All right, there we go. We've got stiff peaks formed. And you wanna make sure not to overdo it because it will turn into like frosting or like butter. Look at how beautiful that is, you guys. Look at that. 2 ingredients, 5 minutes. Why would you ever buy gross canned whipped cream ever again? Don't ever do it. All right, so now we are just going to let our pumpkin pie finish cooling. You see how it's already like leveled out a bit? You can tell like it's cooled a bit and it's like solidified a little. So, okay, it's still too molten to like take off of this. So I'm gonna leave it, like I said, for like 20 minutes. And then once it's cooled down a bit, I will take it off the baking sheet. Okay, so let's give this a couple of hours to cool and then we will come back and show you the results. All right, guys, our pie has been cooling for a couple of hours and it's cool enough for me to cut into it now. So let's do that. First, I just wanna go ahead and point out that my pumpkin pie would have been perfect if I didn't have to put the knife in it to test it. Because I know that's a huge thing that people always ask about, like, how do I make pumpkin pies that don't have a crack in the middle? Well, I've been making this recipe for 4 or 5 years now, and my pies never have cracks in them. So let me know how it comes out for you in the comments. All right, so let's dish this up. Ooh, look at that. Hit it with a little bit of that fresh whipped cream that we made. And look, it's still so fluffy 2 hours after we made it. Beautiful. Okay, now let's take a bite and see how it came out. So good. Yes. It's exactly what I wanted. Super good, super flavorful, nice and moist, nice and creamy. And honestly, this gluten-free crust isn't bad. Is it as good as homemade pie crust? No, but it's good enough. It's gluten-free, and it's really just acting as a vehicle for our pumpkin filling. So, and the whipped cream just makes it. It's so light and fluffy and refreshing, and it's not overly sweet. When combined with the pumpkin pie, it's just like perfect. So I really hope you guys make this recipe. I hope you try it this Thanksgiving, and I hope you love it. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Send this video to somebody that you know with digestive issues that really wants to make a difference in their life with their diet and their lifestyle. Thank you so much to my Patreon supporters. You guys really make this possible. And I am going to have some live streams for you soon. So keep an eye out for that. And thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you next time. Happy Thanksgiving.